Yo, what's up? This is Jay Dennis, and we're back with another and reviewed. And I'm excited for this one. We were doing a band that has been long overdue, but I've been putting them off because I wanted their new album to come out first. One of my absolute favorite bands from high school, and a band that to this day I still love, and I'm so fucking satisfied with their new album. We have one of the big four, I guess, of a particular era of metalcore, and that is Bullet For My Valentine. And what am I referencing there? Matt Heafy and Johnny Christ. Matt Heafy of Trivium and Johnny Christ of Avenged Sevenfold. We're talking about who the big three or who the big four of that era would be, and they said A7X, Trivium, and Bullet For My Valentine. They're trying to figure out who the fourth band would be, and everybody's just like, either Killswitch or Atreyu or whatever. And I'm just like, look, if you could do a big four tour like that, cool, but the Killswitch and Atreyu are both lacking their most iconic vocalists. And I'm getting off topic here. Yes, Jesse Leach is an extraordinary vocalist, but with regards to that era that we're talking about, Howard Jones was the vocalist of Killswitch Engage during that era. And, but I think I'm getting off topic here. Let's get back to Bullet For My Valentine, who I've been listening to since 2006, I think, when I was a sophomore in high school. Really getting into that metalcore music, really getting into the heavier stuff. At first, I thought they were going to suck based off what I heard on MySpace. I'm like, these guys are generic as fuck. They suck. But then my friend, one of my best friends, who I reference a lot in these videos, we were at his house. He showed me the music video for Hand of Blood, and I immediately fell in love. And him and I covered that song. We covered other songs off of The Poison. So Bullet For My Valentine is one of those bands that I was largely paying attention to during most of their releases, from 2006's The Poison all the way up until today, 2021, their most recent release, self-titled, album number 7. That's the range that we're doing. And for the most part, I've largely paid attention to all their releases as they've come out, give or take one or two albums. Because during the 2010s, there were quite a few high school bands that I didn't listen to as intensely. But now that I'm doing ranked and reviewed videos, I am revisiting almost every band I've ever listened to, especially ones in high school, and seeing what I've missed and seeing how well things have aged. And let me just tell you, the mock ranking that I did for this was pretty close to what actually came out. But like another band I've recently done, you might be surprised, or maybe not at all, if you know me at all, at how well, or maybe not how well, their more recent material has been. So let's get into it. I love this band very much. I saw them live, Taste of Chaos 2008, when they were touring Scream Aim Fire. I've got great memories to a lot of their albums, and it sounds like they are coming back harder than ever and making a pretty solid comeback. And even though they are a slightly different makeup, I think a different bassist and a different drummer now, I think they're doing really solid right now. So from least favorite to most favorite albums, I believe the spread is I gave my least favorite album barely an 8 out of 10, and then I gave their best album a 9. So we got a point spread between 7 albums. Let's get into it, go over the ranking, and then I'll tell you what my top 10 Bullet For My Valentine songs are at the end. So at the number 7 spot, we have Temper, something. Yeah, I barely gave this album an 8 out of 10 because I can't really hate on this band. I like them too much, but Temper is easily their worst album, to the point where their number 6 spot is not, it's more like an 8.3 out of 10 versus an 8. So the difference between number 7 and number 6 is actually quite a bit. Temper is largely recycled riffs, song ideas, repetition, really nothing original on this album. Basically B-sides from maybe Scream Aim Fire and then Fever. So their 4th album. When it came out, I wasn't really paying attention to it except for their song Tears Don't Fall Part 2, which is the best song on the album because they had to take the formula from one of their best songs and copy it. It is a great sequel song. I like how they wrote it. but if that's the best song at an 8.6 out of 10, and their worst song, like literally their worst song is on this album. It's called Leech. Barely a good song. The only reason why it's barely a good song is because of the chorus. But the verses suck. And it's just not a great song at all. And then Riot is not particularly great song either. Breaking Point is kind of generic. Truth Hurts, it kind of picks up a little bit, but still nothing exciting there. Just some kind of recycled metalcore riffs. Temper sounds like a recycled version of Fever, but it's not terrible. It's a little improvement over the first two tracks. The other best song on the album is Prisoner of War, which, if I'm not mistaken, sounds like Pretty on the Outside. Maybe a similar progression or key there. But yeah, and then Dead to the World sounds like a Say Goodnight B-side or recycledness. So anyway, Temper, really nothing impressive about this album. There's some solid guitar solos on it, though. Saints and Sinners has a great guitar solo that kind of reminds me of Avenged Sevenfold a little bit. And then Prisoner of War, and then maybe, what was it? Truth Hurts might have a good solo. Bonus track, Not Invincible, is pretty solid, but that's not part of the ranking. But it's just a really recycled album and kind of boring. I would never listen to this album from start to finish again. But if I had to pick a few songs to listen to a little more consistently, Tears Don't Fall Apart 2, Prisoner of War, and maybe Saints and Sinners because of that solo. So yeah, worst album, easily. Next up, at the number 6 spot, we have Gravity, which is their 6th album from 2018. This one is considered like their most sellout album, and people have tried to say like they tried to copy Linkin Park, go nu metal on this album. I get a little bit of why you would say that, but this is 0% a nu metal album. The only nu metal influence I heard were in songs like Over It, which the riff kind of sounds a little bit like Crawling in the Dark from Hoobastank a little bit. And that chord progression and just kind of the way it's played with the drumming, it does sound a little bit like nu metal skateboard music from like the turn of the century that I love, which makes Over It definitely one of the best songs on the album. Beyond that, though, I really wouldn't say there's really any nu metal influence at all, honestly. This album does ditch the guitar solos, but it is still pretty solid. Bullet for My Valentine. Matt Tuck sounds pretty great on this album. I love the ambiance on songs like Letting You Go. Great chorus there. Middle of the album's kind of boring from tracks like Not Dead Yet, Piece of Me, the title track Gravity. All kind of boring songs. But it opens and closes on a strong note. The first 3 tracks are all worth listening to. The last 3 tracks are all worth listening to. You got Coma, which is a beautiful song. Don't Need You is definitely the heaviest song on the album, definitely one of my favorites. And then Breathe Underwater is probably one of Bullet for My Valentine's best closing tracks. Such an epic chorus, such an epic string selection, and just great tone on the acoustic guitar. Gravity just kind of suffers from having a somewhat boring middle section of the album. I think Piece of Me and Gravity kind of drag the album down a little bit. Gravity just sounds like another recycled version of like Faint from Linkin Park or something, but it just lacks heart and soul and relies too much on vocalese. Whoa, oh, oh, oh. Like, it's really hard to pull that off and not be cringy. But Gravity does not deserve any hate. I don't think it's a bad Bullet for My Valentine. I think it's way better than Temper, but it definitely sits comfortably at the number 6 spot. Not a nu metal album. Number 5. I'm surprised this album fell this low. Wait, hold on a second. I gotta fix that. Okay. Number 5 spot goes to Fever, their 3rd album. This is the one that I probably... Actually, no. I was going to say I have the most sentimental value of this album. That is incorrect. But summer of 2010 was a really good summer, and this was one of the soundtracks of that summer. But in hindsight, Fever packs a punch. Out of their 11 tracks on there, maybe about half of them are really good, and the other half are kind of weak. So it definitely sits lower on the list. But even the best songs don't place on my top 10 Bullet for My Valentine songs. I will never understand, unless it's just radio metalhead rock or whatever. I'll never understand why people love the song Your Betrayal that much. Ever since this album came out, I have never loved that song. It's probably one of their most popular songs. It might even be on like Guitar Hero or some shit, or Rock Band, I don't remember. Doesn't even have a guitar solo. Your Betrayal is not a great song. It's very generic. It's very boring. It doesn't have a particularly great bridge. And it's way too long. The album really kicks off with the title track, Fever. That song is fun. The guitar work's a little generic, but it is a fun song. I love the chorus. I got a lot of great memories of that song. And even though it is kind of cookie cutter of Bullet for My Valentine, the song, The Last Fight, is pretty solid. It's got a very Screaming Fire feel to it, and it's pretty thrashy and pretty fun, pretty uplifting. Best song on the album, though, of course, is Alone. Great guitar work. Great chorus, great string selection, great sense. And that's a long song that is epic, and I love it. They definitely got softer on this album. Did a little bit more on the more melodic side, and I think they did a good job with it. You know, songs like A Place Where You Belong or Bittersweet Memories, they do a good job, but there's just a couple of, weaker tracks on here like Pleasure and Pain and Dignity are just boring songs that don't really do a whole lot, and same thing with Begging for Mercy. Just, 3 weak tracks out of 11 will definitely drag the score down a little bit. Closing track, Pretty on the Outside, is pretty solid. Kind of like the slightly better version of Prisoner of War. And then Bittersweet Memories is a pretty uplifting song. So overall, Fever, Last Fight, and Alone are the best tracks. Other than that, Place Where You Belong is pretty cool too. Other than that, the other handful of tracks on this album are kind of forgettable, and that's why, despite the nostalgia and the sentimental value to this album, it sits comfortably at the number 5 spot. All right, next up at the number 4 spot, we have their 5th album, Venom, which is an album that I did get into while it came out. I thought this was a great comeback album. I felt like they brought the heavy back. They brought some of the more original sound and creativity back compared to Temper. It opens on a stronger note with No Way Out, Army of Noise, and Worthless. This is probably one of their more consistent albums. Really no tracks that I hate. It does kind of close on a weak note with Hell or High Water and Pariah, not my favorite songs. But the rest of the album is pretty solid, and it carries it to where it kind of is just marginally better than Fever. Fever might have a couple of excellent tracks, but not even a couple, one. But Venom has more than one. It's got 2 excellent tracks and otherwise pretty solid consistency throughout. The best tracks on this album are Broken, which has solid Poison energy to it, with kind of a more modern, at the time, heaviness behind it. Great riffs, great chorus, very uplifting. But the best song on the album is the title track, Venom. I think that's why Venom really spoke to me. It's because Venom sounds like fucking something you would hear from like Suffocating Words of Sorrow or something from The Poison. Or even like Tears Don't Fall. Like Venom definitely brought back some, again, what was at the time considered like vintage Bullet for My Valentine feels. So it definitely elevates it towards like the middle of the pack. Consistently from start to finish, it's an easy album. It's an easy album to listen to. Some songs are forgettable again, like the last 2, but they're mostly good tracks. You Want a Battle, Here's a War is really fun to listen to. Skin is pretty solid, great riffing there. And great chugging, great riffs. There's a lot of heavy drumming and a lot of chugging on this album. That's why I love it. But it just doesn't tug on the heartstrings the same way that an album like number 3 would, which is Scream, Aim, and Fire. The death toll grows higher. Sorry, I wasn't even trying. If I was trying, it'd only be a little bit better. Yeah, basically their sophomore success, Scream, Aim, and Fire, which probably is the most sentimental album to me. I listened to this album, not even exaggerating, probably a billion times when I was in high school. I've seen them play live twice. Both times they were touring this album. And you know what? I might have just said this about Venom, but I actually think it holds more true to this album, maybe. Scream and Fire is probably their most consistent album. In fact, The entire album is solid from start to finish, up until the last track. Forever and Always, I've never been a huge fan of that song. But here's the thing. When I was first getting into Bullet for My Valentine, I was very critical of their guitar work because I was very much a metal guitar player, and I was trying to avoid like generic riffs and stuff. But I've always enjoyed the lyrics. I've always enjoyed the Matt's vocals, and I've always enjoyed the compositions of the songs and like the hooks and everything. So I could kind of forgive some of the more generic riffing. Them trying to play more like D standard, thrashy sounding stuff on this album. It was executed very well, but the originality of some of the songs like Screaming Fire, Eye of the Storm, nothing really impressive there with guitar solos or anything, but they are still memorable songs. Hearts Burst in the Fire and Waking a Demon is where the album really picks up solid, though. Waking a Demon is easily one of their best songs. The middle of the album, though, Disappear, Deliver Us from Evil, and Take It Out on Me, those have pretty much always been, let me rephrase that, tracks 4 through 7 have pretty much always been my favorite tracks off this album. The amount of emotion and the amount of good feels and good memories I have to songs like Disappear, Deliver Us from Evil, and of course Take It Out on Me, which has that iconic bridge, that iconic, simple, but one of my top 10 favorite solos of all time from Take It Out on Me. Best song on the album. Say Goodnight was a beautiful song to listen to live. I was like front row listening to that. I was enjoying it so much. It's such a great, well-written song. The album kind of closes on a little bit of a lower note. I mean, End of Days and Last to Know are solid, but they're just not incredible. And then Forever and Always is not one of my lesser favorite closing tracks. So Screaming Fire does get an 8.8 out of 10 because it is such a great album, but I don't think it's Bullet for My Valentine's best album. I think it's aged well, and I think it's easy to listen to, but most of my favorite shit is in the middle of the album. The rest of it, I can kind of skip through it. But let's get to my second favorite album, which it's technically tied with Screaming Fire, but I'm going to give the slight edge to their newest album. Their self-titled album number 7, Bullet for My Valentine. Holy shit. If you missed the guitar solos on Gravity, you are going to love the guitar work on this album. You're going to love the lead work. The solos on here are disgusting. Whether they're shredding or they're like actually, I don't know what happened. I don't know who they consulted. But you've got notes of Machine Head. You've got notes of Slipknot, Breaking Benjamin, maybe even a little bit of Architects in certain songs here. I'm about to divulge a little bit more into that. But why is their newest album, why is this almost their best record? It's because, to me, Jay Dennis, it's their heaviest album. This is easily their heaviest album. And you know me, I love the heavy. So when Matt Tuck, fronting a band called Bullet for My Valentine, comes back with the chugs, with the aggressive drop B tuning for most of the album, and a different vocal style. Holy shit, he sounds incredible. And again, the music is just disgusting. You've got I think I called this a new metalcore album, where unlike Gravity, there are actually new metal elements on this album with how the guitar work is written, how some of like your more whammy effects and like low-end riffage and rhythm sections are played. This is more of a new metal album than Gravity was. And I think that's a huge reason why I love this album so much, is because as much as I love metalcore music, I prefer new metal. New metal is my favorite genre. So when they come out with Parasite and Knives, which is just one of the heaviest ways they've ever opened an album, the bridge to Knives, the riffage that sounds like dun 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 with that fucking drumming, that's what sounds like Slipknot to me. And that solo, the dissonance and the whammy sounds like something from like Machine Head's earlier days. And pretty much my new favorite Bullet for My Valentine song is now on this album. It's called My Reverie. That's track 3. The first time I ever heard that riff, oh wait, Breaking Benjamin. Yeah, like I said, just like that clean melodic intro, but then the way it kicks into that main riff, it sounded like something off of like Architect's new album, which Architects has some of the best guitar players in my opinion. But yeah, My Reverie got like a 9.5 out of 10. It is such an incredible song, probably my favorite Bullet for My Valentine song now. It maintains the consistency with No Happy Ever After, which I think is like the only drop C song. Still hits really hard, really heavy, especially that like the breakdown in the middle with like the drumming following the chugging. It sounds incredible. Very original, actually. Can't Escape the Waves has insanely thrashy, great guitar work. The only reason why this album probably didn't get the top spot, though, is because of Bastards and Rainbow Veins, which I don't hate the songs, but they're just like low 8s. I don't know what type of industrial, weird, chanty, goth thing they were going for with Bastards. If they wanted to experiment and do something different, that's fine. To me, it kind of killed the flow of the album. But it's not a bad song. It's still solid enough. And then Rainbow Veins was always my least favorite single that they dropped beforehand. My favorite single that they put out was Shatter. Such a heavy machine head sounding song. I fucking love it. But then it closes on such a solid note too. You got Paralyzed and Death by a Thousand Cuts. Such insanely thrashy, heavy drop beat action. Matt Tuck sounding incredible. Heavy verses with really catchy, poppy choruses that sound really good. It's their heaviest album. Matt Tuck's vocals sound disgusting on this album. I'm extremely excited about it. But unfortunately, they're never going to be able to top, at least at this time, they're not ever going to be able to top their number one spot, which is their first album, The Poison. It's not just because of where we're at in history, but even though I'm in a good place in my life right now, I don't think we can ever top my sophomore year of high school when I was like really breaking into all this metal music. I mean, yeah, I could say that objectively speaking, my life is better right now than it was in high school. But I'm just talking about with regards to like openness to music, the potency to like learning about all this stuff for the first time, the amount of growth and the amount of exposure and the amount of just life that was being lived. The Poison was one of the absolute soundtracks to that year, and for years this album has been huge for me. And even though I don't like doing this, 5 of my top 10 songs are on this album. But The Poison is their most consistent album. There are no songs in this album that I'm just like, ugh, I could skip that one, or ugh, I could do without that one. My least favorite track on the album is better than most of the songs on like their bottom 3 albums. Spit You Out is probably my least favorite song on this album, which gets an 8.5 out of 10. It still has a great, it's still a great song, and it's better than most of the songs off of their bottom 3 albums. But whatever. The Poison has the best intro. It's iconic. It's got Apocalyptica, and then it goes straight into Her Voice Resides. Which, here's the thing about The Poison: it's such a happy sounding album, but it just has that hunger to it. Even if the guitar riffs didn't sound extremely original at the time, or it was very much more like approachable and easy to play, that doesn't take away from the value of the music, though. I used to be really critical of bands where the shit was too easy to play. It doesn't mean that it's still not fun to listen to. So The Poison, maybe in its own way, was a guilty pleasure for me back then, because I thought, oh, this band's generic, they suck, their name's gay. Bleh. Wrong. This band is incredible. They put out an amazing first album. The dun 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 dun. The 4 words to choke upon, dude. That is such a catchy, fun song. And then, of course, you got the iconic Tears Don't Fall. Got my other favorite For My Valentine song on this album, Hit the Floor. I fucking love that song. Remember the first time my friend played that riff for me, he had the wah pedal. It was fun. I miss you, Nick. All These Things I Hate Revolve Around Me is a classic. The Poison, the actual title track, is another like top 3 For My Valentine song. Such a solid, fun song that I also used to cover with my friend. And then the back half of the album, you got 10 Years Today, which has its own iconic chorus. Cries in Vain, which has a awesome outro. I didn't do cocaine before I started doing this, by the way. And then Spit You Out, pretty solid live track. But then the ending track, the bookend effect of The Poison is incredible. You got that incredible intro, but then you have that incredible outro with the end, which is a beautifully well-written Bullet for Valentine song, which has the soft, ballady stuff that you like, but then it picks up and does the heavy stuff. It's just a great epic of an outro track, which was a lot more common back in the mid-2000s metalcore scene. The big epic outro tracks, which are soft and heavy at the same time. The Poison is an excellent album. Gets in the perfect 9 out of 10. Got a lot of great memories to this album. Hung out with friends, did a lot of jackass shit back then. I really miss it. Running a little short on time here, so let's go ahead and recap. We got from least favorite to most favorite: Temper, Gravity, Fever, Venom, Screaming Fire, Self-Titled, and The Poison. And my top 10 Bullet for My Valentine tracks are Four Words to Choke Upon, The End, Broken, Venom, Waken the Demon, Take It Out on Me, Tears Don't Fall, The Poison, My Reverie, and Hit the Floor. So I want to thank you guys for listening to this. Please comment what you agree or disagree with. How would you rank it differently? Do you love the new Bullet for My Valentine album? I'm not giving you an option there. I don't want to hear if you don't like it because your opinion's wrong. But what other good memories do you have to some of their older work? Why is Temper not a bad album? I don't know. But anyway, be sure to check out the rest of the Ranked and Reviewed playlist. Now I've done pretty much all the major bands from my high school days. Still got a few more to do, but like all the big names, most of them have been done, like Trivium, Atreyu, Killswitch Engage. Be sure to check out those videos as well. And I will catch you on the next one. Peace!